What's going on, everyone, and welcome to my post-2025 season Top 50 Roller Coaster Countdown. Since 2017, I've had the privilege of riding now over 500 different roller coasters across North America and Europe. When it came to my travels in 2025, there was a lot of everything. I visited several parks in the United States for the first time, mainly focusing on the Northeast region. I also made return trips to many parks for the first time in multiple years, including visiting some for the first time in 6 years. I also visited a park that by the time you're now watching this video is no longer with us. However, my big highlight in 2025 featured my second trip over to Europe, this time focusing on this one spectacular country. A couple of things before I get the countdown started. First, I want to highlight 3 coasters from my Germany trip that just missed making my top 50. Olympia Looping, the world's largest portable roller coaster, was incredibly smooth and full of positive G-forces. The first modern Vekoma sighting and the prototype suspended thrill coaster, Hal Zuberkopf, flowed beautifully the entire layout and featured some surprising airtime moments. And finally, my first hot take of the video, but Terran at Phantasialand did not make my top 50. The theming and the soundtrack are amazing, and this ride features several snappy transitions. However, there's just too much dead space, particularly in the first half, for it to make my countdown. Lastly, just as a reminder, this top 50 countdown is a subjective list. This list is purely my opinions, and I welcome any agreements or disagreements in the comments, just please keep it civil. This video is part 1 of my countdown. I'll be going through rides 50 through 26 here, and the next video will feature my top 25. With all that, let's begin. Let's start things off with a B&M located where the Carolinas meet. Let's talk Afterburn from Carowinds. Afterburn is my favorite B&M invert as it combines high pacing throughout with snappy and unique inversions better than any other I've ridden. One of my favorite inversions out there is Afterburn's Batwing, which in the back provides incredible positive G-force as you're yanked throughout the entire element. While you won't see any more inverts on my list, this isn't the last old school B&M you'll see. Next on the list is a ride I actually don't know the status of, to be honest. This is Rampage from Alabama Adventure. When I rode this back in 2020, it was a CCI wooden roller coaster. From what I understand, the wooden track on this ride is getting completely replaced with steel. I had thought Rampage would reopen in 2025, but I do not believe it has. When I did ride this in 2020 though, it was a powerful woody. Rampage in this form was probably the most well-rounded CCI I had ridden. It provided good pacing, nice moments of airtime, and lots of lateral force. Not to mention this ride is one of the best first drops on a wooden roller coaster. I was a little disappointed to hear that the retrack with steel was the direction Alabama Adventure was taking with Rampage. However, I understand the decision from a labor perspective, but Rampage as a wooden roller coaster was a strong headliner for this park. I am so pleased this ride stayed in my top 50 this year, and Millennium Force from Cedar Point still holds up well to this day. After operating for 25 seasons, Cedar Point replaced Millennium Force's lift motor, and in 2025, this ride is back to running at its full potential. Intamin have for a long time been leading the way in innovation in the coaster world, and in 2000, they were the first to break the 300-foot barrier. The original Giga Coaster is all about speed without letting up the whole ride. I also think this ride has a few good and underappreciated airtime moments. This was a ride that really got me into this hobby, and while it's no longer at the top of my rankings, I'll always have a soft spot for this beauty. The first RMC to appear in my countdown was the one that started them all, New Texas Giant at Six Flags Over Texas. I haven't ridden New Texas Giant since 2020, so my memory of it is starting to fade a little, but I thought this ride had one of the better first drops on an RMC, and it provided a nice amount of airtime. While I don't recall too much dead space, I could imagine rewriting it now and thinking otherwise. Still, I would definitely take New Texas Giant over the other RMC conversion about 4 hours to the south. The first European coaster appearance in this countdown is probably ranked a lot lower than most who have ridden it. This is Tutatis at Parca Streaks. There's no denying that the theming for this ride is incredible, but the ride experience itself is not flawless. Intamin have created many unique elements recently, like their swing launches. However, at the end of this swing launch are a number of trims on the top hat. This hurts the drop sensation towards the front of the train, and it hurts the pacing for the next few elements, including the stall. This ride does have a few good second half elements though, including sharp airtime hills and a great high-speed inversion. I had high hopes for this ride going into my 2023 Europe trip, and while it does have some nice qualities, to me this is far from one of Intamin's best creations. A couple of underrated RMCs are up next. First we have Goliath at Six Flags Great America. This ride is the definition of short but sweet. This topper track woody may only last around 30 seconds, but there are some powerful elements. The first drop still holds up as one of RMC's best when riding in the back of the train. A powerful ejector airtime hill leads into two great inversions, the dive loop and the awesome floater-filled stall. While I do wish this ride was a little longer, it has enough impactful moments for it to make this list. An RMC now with a little bit of a longer layout is Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. While a lot of enthusiasts have this ranked close to the bottom of their RMCs, I would have to say this is closer to mid-tier. This ride doesn't have any wow moments per se, but it does a lot of things well. I do like the curved first drop providing some lateral force, and the ride does have quite a number of airtime pops and good inversions. I probably won't get to ride this again until at least 2027, but this is another ride I am curious to see if I still regard it as highly when I get the chance to re-ride it. Finally taking the stage are a couple of true wooden roller coasters. First up with a Boardwalk Bullet from Kima Boardwalk. The Gravity Group and Kima Boardwalk really did something unique here, putting a full-size wooden roller coaster into a 1-acre space. Boardwalk Bullet has one of the best opening sequences on a roller coaster, with its curved first drop followed by two intense rapid turns. However, after that crazy start, the ride does start to have a little inconsistency in pacing the rest of the way, which causes it to drop a little in my rankings. That said, this ride is definitely worth going on your way for if you're visiting Texas. The first GCI to appear on this list is Thunderhead, Dollywood's best roller coaster. Probably a year or so ago, this might have been a hot take, but Lightning Rod has been seriously declining in quality over the last few years. Thunderhead is a good twister-style wood coaster, which Dollywood has recently done a wonderful job with retracking it. This ride doesn't necessarily focus on airtime, rather has fast-paced turns throughout. I haven't ridden this since 2022, and while I have been to this park 3 times, I still feel like I need one more visit to get my full thoughts on Thunderhead. Back to RMC now, and this time we have Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. This is a ride that does a lot of things extremely well, but is hindered by its flawed midsection. I do really enjoy the uniqueness of the barrel-rolled first drop, and it's followed up by 3 powerful ejector hills. The cutback is also a well-executed transition. The middle of the ride to me holds it back, as I think some of the airtime is a bit weird and not the most comfortable experience. The ride does speed up pacing at the end and finishes strong. I do think this is a strong ride, but this is definitely a middle-of-the-road RMC to me, rather than a top-end like a lot of enthusiasts regard it as. The next 2 coasters I would describe as pure fun, the first of those being Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. The prototype Mach Extreme Spinner is just one of those rides that has me laughing and cheering the entire layout. Each ride is a unique experience with the cars rotating in different directions through each element. My favorite moment of the ride, aside from the vertical drop in the back, is the S-bend, which if you are facing sideways, you're either thrown into or away from your seat, which is such a cool sensation. Time Traveler is a coaster that just does not get old and is always worth the wait to ride. Alright, we've now come to the first coaster from this year's Germany trip to make my list. Here I present to you FLY from Phantasialand. I absolutely adore this ride, and it will always hold a special place to me as it was my 500th coaster credit. I had the privilege of staying at the Charles Lindbergh Hotel, and the views of this coaster winding around the building, or anywhere in Rookburg for that matter, are stunning. This prototype Vekoma flying coaster is really a work of art. And remember how I was praising Boardwalk Bullet from being built in a tight space? I feel the same way about this ride. How Vekoma and Phantasialand crammed this over 4,000 foot coaster into this small of an area is super impressive to me. The ride experience itself is just surreal. Flying in and around the incredibly themed Rookburg had me in awe. Getting to launch on a flying coaster, particularly the second launch upwards, is really a neat sensation. I also love the little pops of airtime sprinkled around the ride. I was so excited to finally get to ride FLY this year, and it was as amazing of an experience as I could have asked for. Heading back across the Atlantic, but staying outside of the United States, we have the B&M Giga Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. This is a ride that I think is a little underrated, and I find it to be way better than another certain B&M Giga residing in Ohio. What Leviathan does better than that one is it stays lower to the ground overall, which helps keep up its speed. In addition, Leviathan features more pronounced airtime moments, including the impressive low to the ground speed hill. Some may argue this ride is a little too short, but personally, I don't feel shortchanged on this ride as it reaches the brake run. Leviathan was the standout when I visited in 2023, and between this and the new headliner, those are some of the reasons I want to make my return trip very soon. And you know how I was saying Leviathan was way better than one of the B&M Gigas? Well, conversely, I actually think it's almost on par with Fury 325 at Carowinds. Some have this coaster ranked in their top 5, but to me, this ride is nowhere near that mark. What this ride does well is the first half. The first half of Fury is faster and more forceful than Leviathan all the way from the drop to the treble clef. What ruins this ride from being higher for me is the second half. After the treble clef, the pacing drastically slows and includes a couple of slower airtime hills and a way too drawn out helix. While yes, I will concede this is at least the best B&M Giga, to me it doesn't come close to the high-end rides that will appear in my top 25. The first new for 2025 coaster is up next. Heading back to America's roller coast, we have Siren's Curse, only one of a few tilt coasters in the world. Modern Vekoma is back at it again, and this time they sent Cedar Point, which was meant for Six Flags Mexico, but was meant for Energylandia, this unique creation. I do like what Cedar Point did for the onboard audio for this ride. I definitely think it enhances the experience. The tilt itself is kind of a fun gimmick, with the train release dropping straight down having some good force. The rest of the layout contains a good mix of what Modern Vekoma has done well. A smooth ride experience with some unique transitions and a couple of high-speed inversions. Even in a top-heavy park like Cedar Point, I thought this ride had a good chance of being one of the better coasters there, and that's exactly what it ended up being. We now head down to Florida for the first time in this countdown. Let's talk about Kumba from Busch Gardens, Tampa. Kumba is my favorite coaster by B&M, which means you will not see any more B&Ms in this or in my next video. Kumba is the epitome of what I love about old school B&M. It may not have the most unique layout, but it is really intense and powerful. This ride has absolutely incredible pacing, and there are loads of positive G-forces throughout. This ride is also gorgeous to look at. Few off-ride moments are better to watch than Kumba going through its interlocking corkscrews. I'm really glad to see Busch Gardens Tampa got this ride back up and running after a long hiatus, and I hope Kumba continues to roar for a long time. The coaster I decided to make my 100th credit back in 2018 was Renegade at Valley Fair. Renegade is the headlining coaster at this charming park, and this ride really packs a punch. The S-curve first drop is unique to this ride, which is followed throughout the layout by sustained floater hills as well as one or two sharp pops of airtime. When I last rode this in 2024, the feel of the entire ride was outstanding, outside of a pothole at the bottom of the first drop. Renegade is definitely one of the better GCIs I've ridden, and it's one of those rides I wish it was a little closer that I could experience more often. For the third time this video, we head back to Sandusky, Ohio. This time let's talk about the defunct Top Thrill Dragster. No, I am not referring to the revamped Top Thrill 2, which to me doesn't come close to its predecessor. The original Top Thrill Dragster had one of the most spectacular launches I have ever experienced. Few moments continuously got me hyped up riding coasters than awaiting that launch. The lap bars and the exposure made it such an adrenaline rush. I know I'm in the minority on this, but I'm a little disappointed the direction the revamp went. That launch was something special, and it's a shame there might not be a launch like that ever again. A launch, however, that is alive and well, for the most part, comes from Max Force at Six Flags Great America. The reliability of this ride is questionable at best. When this thing is running, I think it's one of the more underrated coasters out there. The air-powered launch by S&S has one of the fastest accelerations of any coaster in the world. After the punch of the first launch, the rest of the layout has a couple of really unique elements. The quick airtime pop after the launch leads into the dog tongue, which provides some nice hang time. That is followed by one of the fastest inversions out there, finishing with another double inversion. This ride may be short, but I find it to be more than just a one-trick pony. Let's head to another great state for coasters, Pennsylvania. Here you'll find the great steel coaster, Phantom's Revenge from Kennywood. Originally designed by Arrow and called Steel Phantom, Morgan was called upon in the early 2000s to rip up the track and build a new ride on top of the existing structure. This layout definitely uses the terrain to its advantage, starting off with a swooping drop and following it with an even larger drop into a ravine. The first half of this ride is all about speed and positive G-forces, whereas the second half is all about the airtime. And because the trains on Phantom's Revenge have such free lap bars, you get strong ejector over every hill. To me, this is easily the strongest ride at Kennywood, and it's easily the best Morgan I've ridden. Every time I ride this next coaster, it seems to take a big rise up my rankings. This year was no different for Legend at Holiday World. I unfortunately did not get a chance to ride this in 2024, but after a couple more rides in 2025, this became my top CCI. This ride has some serious power, and it's one that just charges through the entire layout. Legend may not have too many airtime moments, but the ones it does have provide strong ejector. However, this ride's MO mainly focuses on lateral forces. The double helix highlights this ride, and is why Legend is known for being the king of laterals. I really don't know how much higher this ride can climb in my rankings, but I shouldn't doubt that it could do so again. I've already talked about one California RMC in this video. Now comes another one in Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. While this is a dueling coaster that rarely duels, you do have the benefit of experiencing both sides of the layout each ride. While dueling certainly makes this experience more enjoyable, to me this does feel like a complete ride. Yes, the lift hill in the middle does hurt the pacing some, but I do think of it more as a 2-for-1 experience because of it. In my opinion, I think the greed side of this coaster has the superior layout. Between the twist and shout, double down, and stall, there's way more to that side in my opinion than the blue side. Twisted Colossus may have its faults mainly due to operations, but I think this RMC is far from one of the weaker ones. Last year, one of the biggest risers in my rankings was Prowler at Worlds of Fun. This GCI has an out and back layout, and this ride just hauls through the entire course. The pacing has sustained the entire ride, and every airtime hill you come across gives strong floater to ejector airtime. Propeller also has some good lateral force on the turnaround halfway through, as well as the turnaround at the end of the ride. This is a coaster I really think is underrated and deserves a lot more love than it receives. Earlier in this countdown, I had Tutatis at Parc Astrix ranked a lot lower than most. Now I have its sister coaster, Pantheon, at Busch Gardens Williamsburg ranked a lot higher than it. The big critique I hear with Pantheon is how a beautiful and well-landscaped park like Busch Gardens Williamsburg shortchanged the theming for this ride. While I certainly will not argue Tutatis is by far and away the better themed ride, Pantheon is less flawed in its layout and frankly has some better elements. The biggest advantage for Pantheon is while Tutatis has those horrible trims on the top hat, Pantheon does not, which allows for much stronger pacing in the second half. The Outer Bank airtime hill on Pantheon provides great negative and lateral forces and is followed up by one of the best stalls Intamin have done to this point. When comparing two rides, theming does help, but I frankly don't think Pantheon and Tutatis are really close to each other when it comes to the layout, which is why Pantheon is much higher on my list. I had two coasters for my Germany trip vying for the final spot in my top 25. The coaster that just missed the cut is Expedition G-Force at Plopsaland, Deutschland. This Intamin debuted in 2001, the year after Millennium Force opened. One of the opinions I've heard from those who have ridden both is G-Force is what they wish Millennium ended up being. In some respects, I would agree with this, as it is certainly the more dynamic ride between the two. G-Force I would also say has the better first drop, especially in the back. The main feature when it comes to this ride is the number of strong airtime hills it has. Not one of those airtime hills on G-Force is weak, and each one sends you out of your seat. I do wish this ride had a little more positive G-Forces to it, which would have easily pushed this ride into my top 25. That said, I was extremely grateful to get to ride on Expedition G-Force this year, one of the more iconic roller coasters out there. And that concludes part 1 of my 2025 Top 50 Roller Coaster Countdown. Stay tuned, as soon I will be releasing part 2, my top 25. Feel free to leave any comments regarding the coasters discussed in this video. With that, until next time, hope you all have a great day and take it easy.